My name is Logan Crow, and I am the executive director and founder of the Frida Cinema in downtown Santa Ana. And we are proud and excited to welcome back once again Mr. Craig Duffy and Mrs. Becca'lise Deveaux of This Cinematic Life.
Hello.
Hello. How are you?
Pretty good.
Good.
Welcome back.
Yeah.
So for those who've been watching, this has sort of become our Saturday night thing now. This is our third straight Saturday at 9 p.m. Talk to us a little bit about why 9 p.m. because I'm sure people have been wondering why 9 p.m. And incidentally, I'm happy to talk to you at 9. I'm happy to talk to you at any time. But why did we choose 9 p.m.?
9 p.m. is the safest bet for when our daughter Lola will probably be asleep.
Yeah.
It worked out so much last week because she figured out what we were up to. She said, "Are you doing your show?" Because I know why. It's because I was putting on makeup and I haven't been wearing it lately. And she's like, "Why are you putting on makeup? You doing your show?" I'm like, "No." And then she decided she would not sleep last last week and came out. So I waited. I tricked her.
Yeah.
She asked if I was doing it. I was like, I don't know. So she
Yeah, for those of you who missed out last week, and all of our shows are now on our YouTube channel, so you can go back through our old shows. Lola was definitely the special guest star of last week. Totally unexpected visit. Took over the show for a while with style, and it was a blast to have her on. Had a little bit of a Q&A with Lola.
Yeah.
Talked about Star Wars, which wasn't on either of our lists. Shame on us. But that was a blast. It was a blast to have her on. So she's all asleep right now?
Yeah, she had a long day out riding her bike in the sun, and I knew she wasn't going to last very long. So she conked out really early for her. So she's solidly asleep. Who knows? She may suddenly come out here, but I don't think so.
I turned the fan on in her room to give some white noise.
Muffle us talking a little bit. Yeah, she's smart though. She was suspicious. I was kissing her goodnight, and she's like, "So you gonna watch a movie or what?" I'm like, "I don't know." Like, she knew you were something.
Well, I'm sure I could speak for some folks that are tuning in that I welcome the opportunity, should she surprise us, of a surprise cameo appearance again, because that was a blast. So for those who have not tuned into other shows or who'll be tuning into the future, talk to us a little bit about This Cinematic Life, your project, your sort of history with and around film, beyond being two of the most film-loving people I know. Tell us about that project, any other projects that you work on that as relate to cinema.
Okay.
Cinematic Life started out as our blog. We both enjoy writing about movies and obsessing about them in general. So we started that, 5 years, 6?
The first book collected 5 years. And
What?
Yeah.
All right, so several years ago.
I think it's 7.
7 years. Wow. 7 years ago, we started blogging, and we were blogging quite a bit in the early days, tapered off a little bit, but we're getting back into it because we've had so much fun with these talks that I was like, I miss talking movies and writing about movies. So it's in a bit of a resurrection phase right now. We also have a monthly film club.
Actually, I think 9.
Oh, 9 years. Okay. Yeah, so we also have a monthly film club with our friends, which is a lot of fun, picking things and watching and discussing these movies. It's a lot of fun, and we miss it. We haven't had a meeting since February. We miss everyone. Hi, film club friends. We miss you. What else? You wrote some books?
Yeah, I did some of the blog entry. The first 5 years of blog entries were collected into my first book, Regimen, and then the second book was the leftover pieces from after that, when blog production slowed down for a bit there, but that also has some cool stuff. I included some music playlists, some photography I did, and about a 10-page piece on the Oscars in 2008. And then I'm pretty active running the Twitter account for the blog. I've been mostly right now recommending stuff that's on the Criterion channel, hashtag Criterion Quarantine. So trying to get people to check out the Criterion channel and a variety of films that are available there.
Yeah, the Criterion channel really is an incredible resource for those who aren't subscribers. I think we have maybe one or two films on our list today that'll be on that channel. Any recent films that you caught on the channel that maybe you hadn't seen before that you were excited to catch up on?
Well, we watched one the other day. It was, I liked it enough, Crimson Kimono.
Yes, it was a good yelling at the movie or yelling at the TV kind of movie. Because noir.
The Crimson Kimono?
Yeah.
Crimson Kimono, yes.
Sam Fuller Film Noir. It's part of the Columbia. They have a package on Criterion of noir films.
Yes.
Columbia. And
very dramatic men acting very dramatically. I'm like, these guys are dumb. This girl should dump both of them.
But notable at the time for having a strong Asian male lead.
Yes, that was awesome.
Right on.
Location photography in LA and featuring aspects of the Japanese culture of Los Angeles.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And we saw another Jacques Tati film today, which is on the channel called Traffic, which she laughed her head off about. I could hear her all speaking dinner.
Right on.
She's a fan.
Yeah, she's one movie away from knocking out the entire Tati filmography.
So I can't remember, Craig, when we met. By the way, folks, by all means, jump into the YouTube chat. We'll check it every once in a while. Read any comments you have right now. We just have a lot of hellos. Elias, Christina, William, they all say hello. Connie and Supat9 says, we miss you. Rachel and Colin, we miss you too. We miss you so much. Two amazing Frida Cinema friends and family.
Actually, Colin vanished from Facebook.
Giselle says hello.
You left
Braden.
us.
Yes. No, it's great. It's great to get everyone back together, at least virtually, until such time as we can. Now, one of the things I was going to ask you was, so Craig, I've known you longer. I've known you since way back in the Monticello days. Mm-hmm. When we met, I know you weren't married yet, but did you already know Becca'lise, or did you get to know her? Okay.
Because I actually, my first ever contact with you was virtual. When we had been dating 1 year, I was looking for I was trying to find a rep screening that would fall on our anniversary, and you doing the calendars. So I reached out to you because I wanted to plan far enough ahead, and like the May our
such a good boyfriend.
Yeah, our dating anniversary is in May, and May calendars weren't up, so I reached out to see if you knew yet what was going to be happening in May that year. That would have been 2007.
Wow, that's yeah.
It was like a lifetime ago.
Yeah.
So see some cool rep screening, and there wasn't really anything too crazy, but we ended up going to the Egyptian, and they had a documentary on British people working in the American film industry of the classical era, like Cary Grant, and it was narrated by and actually introduced by Michael York.
I got his autograph.
Yeah, she yeah,
very cool.
Brought her old film textbook.
Logan himself. That's awesome.
Yes.
Yeah. So is it? I'm assuming you two met somehow having to do with cinema, or was that just a magical miracle that you both love film so much?
We went to high school together, actually.
Okay.
We weren't really friends. We had some mutual friends, and the magic of MySpace, we started talking that way through just mutual friends. Like, oh, I remember that guy. Oh, I remember her, kind of a thing. And then he peeped my favorite films list on my profile page and decided I was worth talking to, I guess.
And I kept trying to get her to hang out, and she kept shooting me down. And then I had actually already gone on a date that day. I had gone on like an afternoon date with a coworker.
Yeah.
And it, wasn't really headed anywhere. Like we saw that Jason Reitman movie, Thank You for Smoking, and I didn't care for it, and I don't think she cared for it either. And we didn't even want to go get food afterwards. And so I just went home, and I was on AOL Instant Messenger. And finally, she's like, hey, the Notorious Betty Page just came out. You have any interest in going to see that? I'm like, yeah, sure.
Was that your first date movie?
Yes.
Oh, that's
Yeah.
fantastic. I love it. That's great. And then the rest is history. We got beautiful Lola and still together, still watching lots of films. And I love that you two have this shared passion and that you take that shared passion and create projects out of it, like this cinematic life and everything else you do. So, so folks, dear old friends who we've just known each other through that cinematic world, and Craig was always one of the most vocal people saying, man, it'd be great if you could run and program a theater. And so it was, I think it was safe to say the Frida was kind of both of our dreams come true at some level, because it's something you always sort of saw, and we talked about it so much.
I'd even done a Cinematic Life was a thing by that point. I had done a blog post about, like, it was called If I Ran the Zoo, where I just spitballed like what my dream cinema would be. And I think I remember you like just saying, there might be something like that happen, did it?
Keep your eyes and ears open.
Yeah.
It's still just such a trip, and on that note, folks, if I can take a little segue, the Frida Cinema, obviously, for those who know and love us, you know who we are. For those who don't, we are the only nonprofit independent art house cinema in Orange County. And like all theaters in California, and 97% of them across the nation, we're currently closed. And, we are streaming films, we are putting out shows, we are keeping connected to our community. But obviously, we need support during these difficult times. So if you haven't already, please take a moment to visit us online at thefridacinema.org. Our website's right below me. And the best way to support us right now, actually, is if you look at the top right corner of our screen, you'll see something called the Quarantine. It was an amazing 43-page illustrated magazine that was put together, an e-zine, really, because we'll email it to you, by 15 talented local artists who wanted to come up with a way to support the Frida, came together under the leadership of Lauren Clinton, an amazing friend of the Frida, and put together this collection of poetry, screenplays, drawings, even a coloring page, a Pink Flamingo's coloring page. It's really fantastic. All they ask is a minimum donation of $5, and we will email you the zine. So by all means, consider picking up a Quarantine of your own. You can also text a donation by texting the word film to 714-276-6080. While we are closed, we will continue to stream films. If you go to our website, you'll see a collection of streaming films on top. Every one of those films, if you rent them, half of the proceeds of every film you rent go straight to the Frida. And then hopefully, fingers crossed, we'll be back at the theater as soon as we can. Obviously, when it's safe to do so. Keep following us on social media, and we'll definitely make noise when that day starts to come soon, and when we have an idea of when we'll be able to reopen. But until then, and beyond that, because I really want to keep these things going, we've talked about it as a group. Events like these, conversations like these, YouTube streams are something we've been wanting to do, and I think that we have been buried in the day-to-day to really take the time to foster and research and start these things. Obviously, this time has given us a lot of time to get creative, but we don't want to stop this. We're having so much fun with these. And again, it's always a pleasure to have you on 3 weeks in a row. I'm loving it. We did not plan for that. It just, let's do it again. Okay. So it's been great.
Have no ideas.
Yeah.
We watched actually one of the Frida, we streamed to benefit you. We watched the Bill Cunningham documentary.
Oh, yeah. Right on. Yeah, our number one film so far has been The Wild Goose Lake, followed very closely by number 2, the Fangoria release, Porno, which we've gotten such great feedback on. People are loving that. So horror fans, horror heads, watch Porno. If you haven't, don't let the name, well, maybe the name doesn't scare you away. Maybe that's why you rent it. But I'm saying it's a great film. It's fun for horror fans. I really loved the first one we screened, Bakurao, which was amazing. And I just watched Other Music, which was incredible, indie record store documentary. But at any rate, last week we shared our lists for the top 10 trip around the world movies. It was your idea to, while we're quarantined, to pick films that sort of provide an escape and have a transformative effect on the audience, take you somewhere out far away into the world. And so this week we thought it'd be fun to flip it and do our top 10 films that take place in a single location. So caveats, for the most part in a single location. So maybe it starts and ends outside, or there's moments here, but really the bulk of the film takes place in a single location. Any other things you want to tell us about how you put the list together, or do you want to dive right in?
I definitely went the underseen/underrated route when making my list, because there were a lot of really good ones that I didn't include that I assumed people have seen and have talked about. So I didn't forget about some of those. But
yeah, of the 3 lists we've done, this was the one that I left the most films out of, that I had to take films out. This was the one that was really hard to pare down. I also left a few out because I was like, I think they've been talked about enough. But do you want to give us your runner-up list, and then I'll share mine?
Yeah. Well, and I kind of just tried to do an even balance of pretentious crap and
right.
and movies that people might actually like.
Yeah.
I left out Clerks 2, Panic Room, The Big Chill, The Bitter Tears of Petra von Kant, Assault on Precinct 13, Days of Heaven, Repulsion, and The Thing.
Repulsion.
Yeah.
Right on. I left out. For one thing, we wanted to pick films that are available streaming in some form or another, with a focus on films that are streaming on platforms like Amazon or Netflix, where you pay a monthly subscription, but also films that maybe aren't, but you can at least rent somehow. 2 films I left off simply because they're not streaming anywhere are 1994's Death and the Maiden and 1991's Closetland. Both very intense films, amazing films, but not available on streaming. I left out Glengarry Glen Ross, one of my favorite films, only because they do kind of leave the office quite a bit. Most of the film takes place in the office, but you got a restaurant, you got they go to someone's house, you got a car. There's a few places. I left out Don't Breathe, Wait Until Dark, Misery, The Shining, and Green Room because I didn't want my list to just be all horror. So, what's that?
Gosh.
What's up?
I mentioned Green Room to him, and
it totally
forgot.
In one ear out the other.
Yeah.
I almost Wait Until Dark as well.
Wait Until Dark is so great. Yeah. No, I left out Die Hard because Die Hard gets talked about enough. And lastly, I left out Clue because I just included Clue in a list last week, and I don't want to come off as like a total Clue addict.
I keep thinking of movies like, I could have done this one. It's so hard. It's so hard to narrow you down.
So before we jump in, let me see. Any notes? Rachel and Colin miss us too. Mondo Celluloid Days. Oh, Mondo Celluloid Days. Absolutely. Back in the day, Craig was such an amazing photographer for these events. You really were. Good times. A lot of people saying hello. Stupid autocorrect. I liked amassing, Giselle. That was fine. AIM, a shout out for Instant Messenger.
Yay!
All right. And what's that?
I was calling out my screen name, Girl W Gun 42. Like people like thought I was a woman. Yeah, but
you put girl.
Yeah, but just there's a Godard quote about all you need to make a movie is a girl and a gun.
He's been a snob forever.
my very first AIM name was Killer Bob. It was yeah. And then it was Tristero 20 because I was crying of Lot 49. So talk about being a geek. Yeah. Wow, good times. Hadn't thought back about those days. So tell us all about. Let's just get. What's that?
Everyone in the comments, post your embarrassing AIM names.
Yes. Share your AIM names. Share your list too. If you get inspired by, if you have a movie that we've already written out our top 10, so it's not like you're gonna influence us. So if you've got films that you're like, oh my god, this film, how could you forget it? That's set in one location. We'd love to read them. So your number 10, I love. So let's go right into it.
Okay. So like in the past, we'll alternate. I'll go first. She'll go. Yeah, because we each did 5s. So mine is 2012's Dredd, directed, it says on the screen, directed by Pete Travis, but every year more and more people say that it was actually really directed by Alex Garland, who wrote it.
Really?
Yes. He wrote the screenplay, and everyone says that he was the real actual director. It'll probably be a poltergeist situation. You know, was it Toby Hooper or Spielberg for forever? But yeah, it was written by Alex Garland. You know, like I said, 2012. The same year, actually, that The Raid Redemption came out, the Gareth Evans Indonesian action film, and the same premise in, you know, police force has to work their way up a giant high-rise building to take out a crime boss at the top. But I prefer this to The Raid. I like The Raid 2, but Raid 1 kind of left me cold. But Dredd is really great, based on the British comic book from it's an anthology comic book called 2000 AD that's been running for England, and Judge Dredd is a very popular character. Dystopian future, fascist regime. The police are judge, jury, and executioner all in one, and starring Olivia Thirlby. What's her name from
Game of Thrones? Yeah.
Edie from Game of Thrones, and Carl Urban as Dredd. The thing that really is notable for me is that it was photographed by Anthony Dodd Mantle, who's an Academy Award-winning cinematographer. He won for Slumdog Millionaire, and he's done a lot of Danny Boyle's films. But he's a trailblazer with digital. He shot Thomas Vinterberg's The Celebration back, you know, the start of the Dogma 95 movement. He did Julian Donkey Boy for Harmony Korine. He did Antichrist for Lars von Trier.
I think he did Breaking the Waves too, right? Or am I wrong there?
He was a visual consultant.
Okay,
that's
what it was.
Not the cinematographer, but like he was brought on as a visual consultant, whatever that means, on that. But now he did 2 movies with Rush and that whaling one in the heart of the sea, I think it was called. But yeah, he is like one of the most amazing cinematographers ever, and he shot this. And I think it was because he wanted to work in 3D. The movie was actually shot in 3D. I missed it in theaters. I would love to one day actually see it projected in 3D. But even on its own, just some really cool slow-mo, high-res photography that I know would look killer in, you know, in stereo.
Because you've got this, one of the things about the film is there's a drug, right, that's on the market that when you take it, everything slows down. And the way that they capture that, I think there's a scene in particular where Lena Headey's in a bathtub.
Yes.
And she takes the drug and she blows out smoke, I think it was. And it's just the way it's shot. And I think does she like punch her hand in the water so the water comes up? Something happens that's just all so slow-mo, and the sound design on it just makes it all tactile. And yeah, that's a great pick. Dredd was a nice surprise. I also wish I'd seen it in the theater. I watched it on the small screen. I think the predecessor, the Sylvester Stallone movie may have given people a bad feeling, but check out Dredd. I agree. Again, I didn't want to make mine horror heavy, so I'm going to kick off with horror. My number 10 had to be on this list. It is Neil Marshall's The Descent. This was a film that just absolutely terrified me, and I have seen a lot of horror films. When I say that I'm desensitized to horror, I'm not proud of the fact. It makes me sad. I wish I wasn't, because I love the thrill of being scared by a horror film. And so because I'm desensitized, when there is a horror film that absolutely terrifies me, it goes on a pedestal. My sister and I, Giselle, we went to see The Descent based solely on the fact that we were huge fans of Neil Marshall's previous film, Dog Soldiers, which we saw at the American Cinematheque. It like barely got a run at all. I don't even know if it got a run. I just know they were playing it. And we heard that that director had a new film out, and the poster looked interesting, and had our minds blown by just how intense and well done The Descent is. It is not for the squeamish, but it's actually a very smart film. It's got some great performances. It is surprising. The stakes are real. You have a an all-female group of friends who, after a trauma, re-meet after a year to go spelunking, to go cave diving. They decide to, well, they don't decide to. One of them sort of doesn't tell the others that they're going to go look at a cave pattern, I forget what the technical word is, system that's never been explored, and all hell breaks loose. So great film, The Descent. Talk to us about your number 9.
My number 9 is the 2002 film Russian Ark. It's not only in one building, so it was filmed at the State Hermitage Museum in the Winter Palace in St. Petersburg, but it's all one shot, and they filmed it in a day, and it's basically a POV shot. It's like you're a character and you're walking through the museum and there's a man guiding you, and as you're passing in and out of the rooms, there's people entering and going, and you're going through time and learning about Russian history, and it's incredible that they pulled it off. I don't know if I'm describing it well, but like how you can picture it. Yeah, it's just like, then you turn a corner and who are these people, and they're talking, and then you turn around and they're gone, and then more people are coming, and it's really surreal kind of experience. And I want to watch it again. I've only seen it the one time, but it really stuck with me. I can't believe, I'm like, were they all hiding? Like, I don't know how they choreographed everyone coming and going, and it's so elegant the way it just moves through. And there's thousands of people in this movie, and where are they coming from? Where did they go? It's really incredible that they even had the idea to do this, and they pulled it off in a day. I think they had just
really?
one day of shooting. I think it was the 3rd or 4th take, and they're like, that's that, we have to do it, because they shut down the whole thing so they could film it. They had a day. It's amazing.
Well, and they, if memory serves, like, you're going through the museum, and this opulent set design and costuming, and everyone's hitting their marks, but it's going through Russian history at the same time, right? You're going through different parts and culture, dance, food, just every room you've been transported to another part of history and culture that has been impeccably detailed in one shot. No, it's an incredible film. I've only seen it once. I saw it on the big screen with Giselle, who's a huge fan. See if she chimed in. There it is. Logan says, amazing. It was all one shot, and I was shocked because, she did not realize it was one shot when we watched it. It was magnificent. Lucky to see it on the big screen. Absolutely. Christopher says, Craig, so cool to see you on here. It's been so long. Laura, The Descent. Oh, The Descent. Yeah, so scary. You do care about the characters.
Hi, Chris.
Oh, God, Elias. Climax would have definitely been on my list if I thought about it. The Lighthouse and the Witch. Yeah, The Lighthouse is great. The Witch is great.
I love both of those.
But Russian Ark. We're now. I had it up on screen, but Russian Ark.
Yeah, that's streaming
Kino,
on Kino now,
which
and Fandor.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, it's findable.
Yeah, Kino now I got turned on to because that was, though I didn't end up watching Bakaru through or at all, but I was gonna do it, and then I saw the runtime. But I downloaded Kino now so that I could have potentially watched Bakaru to support the Frida.
Thank you. I'll say very little about my number 9. It's not such an obscure film, but I will say that if you're going to watch it on Fandango now. It is the director's cut of Dustbowl by Wolfgang Petersen from 1981. The movie, the theatrical release in and of itself is fantastic. It's fine. But the long version is just absolutely incredible. It's 208 minutes long, and you will never want to step foot on a submarine for the rest of your life. It tells a tale of German U-boat officers and crew in a submarine, and for the most part, it does leave the sub quite often, but towards the beginning and end. But really, the bulk of the film is you're in this submarine, and it's just such an amazing feat of technical brilliance that in such a tight location, you really get a sense of the claustrophobia at the same time that you feel like you're in a real setting. It doesn't feel gimmicky. It's hard to explain, but you're there. And what is so effective about this movie are the sounds. There is a sequence that took my breath away when I saw it. I was lucky to see the uncut on the big screen, where they're trying to evade getting on the enemy sonar, so they keep diving lower and lower and lower. And they keep finding out that they're not low enough, so they're really pushing it. And the camera is focusing on bolts on the submarine that are starting to tremble, and you're starting to hear the sound of metal that is condensing, and the sweat. And
claustrophobic just with you describing it.
And it goes on, and it's and it's longer in the uncut version. Dustbowl's an incredible film. Check it out if you ever get a chance to see it on the big screen. Watch it, but even on the small screen, it's a fantastic film. Next up is your number 8.
Lovers on the Bridge.
Lovers on the Bridge.
1991, directed by Leos Carax. Leos doesn't make movies very often. His last feature was Holy Motors, if anyone's seen that. It used to be on Netflix. One of my later films down the list also used to be on Netflix. I miss the days when like batshit crazy stuff like Holy Motors was on, was on Netflix. And he's got an upcoming film. It's a musical called Annette, starring Adam Driver and Marion Cotillard, and all the music is done by the band Sparks.
Oh wow!
Yeah.
Is it new music?
Yes, new music, original pieces, and it's listed as post-production. So my hope is that it'll actually be able to come out, that it won't be held up because of plague. But Lovers on the Bridge, 1991. It's about two homeless people played by Juliette Binoche and Denis Lavant. And they kind of live on the Pont Neuf bridge in Paris. The original idea was to actually shoot it on the actual bridge over the course of like a couple months on like handheld 8mm cameras. But Denis Lavant had an accident and like was out of commission for a while, so they lost their window. And so what was supposed to be like a low budget, like $8 million movie ended up, or 8 million franc movie ended up being a $70 million franc film because they had to build a scale replica of the bridge on a lake in a different part of France, and then have like facades up to look like the part of Paris that is around that bridge. And it's a crazy movie, just these two, on the fringes characters. And there's a scene where they fall in love, and it's set on on France's bicentennial, and just crazy fireworks show going on all around them on the bridge. And then they end up like water skiing under the bridge and stuff. It's just it's crazy.
Yeah, I mean, if it's anything like Holy Motors, I mean, that film was was quite an adventure. Mm-hmm. I think Lovers on the Bridge. Did you mention that had been remade?
No, but
okay.
I was showing Becca. Yeah. Like it was an early Miramax, like just before they got bought by Disney, and it's totally indicative of how they would market, because they're famous for, they chopped off the end of Cinema Paradiso and all that. But Lovers on the Bridge, like I said, it's about a homeless couple, but the poster is like, so they're like wearing sweaters and like airbrushed, and it looks like like a Nancy Meyers movie or something, for the American theatrical poster. Was a little deception.
Well, check that out. Check out Holy Motors too, folks, if you get a chance. That film you'll never see anything like it. My number 8 is Mike Flanagan's Hush. An absolute surprise on Netflix. Another film that left me on the edge of my seat. It's a very, very sort of modest production. Most of it takes place inside a house, if not right outside the house. And it's basically about a deaf woman who one night is visited by a quite insane murderer. It's one of those really, really creepy films where you never really get an idea as to why or what. It's just bad luck, you were home type thing. There are so many moments in this film that are so chilling, particularly when you realize, along with your killer, that the person that you're stalking is deaf. He starts to pick up on the fact as he's trying to scare her that she's not responding, and then ends up using that to his advantage. Of course, she ends up turning the tables and using it to her advantage, but it's not that simple. It's not one of those films where that's the end of the story. Have you seen Hush by any chance?
I have, yeah.
Yeah, it's got a lot of twists. It's very well acted. You start off with a very, very creepy mask, which is never any fun. And then you lose that, and somehow that makes it even scarier. The whole film's just got a lot of really, really interesting... it takes a lot of interesting turns. It makes a lot of interesting decisions. And it reminded me, obviously, it takes a lot more liberties with its horror than a Wait Until Dark or a movie where someone is taking advantage of someone's disability, and then that person's using their disability to their advantage. But again, another movie that I watched late at night, only because I'd heard so much about it, and that I found really, really scary. So I enjoyed that one.
Now Flanagan has taken on the horror world by storm with, Dr. Sleep and...
Yeah. And The Haunting of Hill House, which was incredible. I thought that was an amazing, amazing miniseries. So you have a horror for your next one.
Kind of. I have The Old Dark House from 1932. Was that James Whale?
Yep.
It's James Whale, yeah.
Whale. It is James Whale of Frankenstein fame, and actually has some of the same universal horror characters. Not characters, but the actors. We've got, yes, we got Boris Karloff in it, and I didn't look up his name, but the guy who plays Dr. Pretorius in Bride of Frankenstein, the very flamboyant, the bride of Frankenstein. He's hilarious. It's a horror comedy. I don't know. It's funny in the same way that Bride of Frankenstein was funny. It's a very witty, kind of campy, but still has some kind of violent scene for 1932. So five travelers end up stuck in this weird, creepy house during a rainstorm, and there's just a weird, creepy family that lives there, and it's like, oh, don't talk to Uncle so-and-so or whatever in the attic. He's crazy. He's the crazy one, and like, you're the crazy one. And yeah, it's just it's really entertaining. And I recently saw it for the first time, which is weird considering how much I enjoy those 30s horror movies.
Well, I think it got a restoration recently. So.
Well, that's probably why.
Yeah.
This one's on Canopy, so it's watchable for free if you have access to Canopy. But yeah, the whole thing is in this weird house, except for when they arrive and then the very end, I guess. But yeah, just you get very familiar with like that staircase in the living room and just the weird configurations of people who end up in each space.
Was it Melvin Douglas?
Yes, Melvin Douglas at his most charming. He's very much the suave ladies fan in this one, which I'd only really seen him in stuff when he was older, and I didn't really get the appeal, I guess, that I saw him in this. I'm like, oh, okay, he's kind of like a William Powell type.
I just thought about that too. I don't think I have either, because I think Melvin Douglas, I'm thinking Being There, and yeah, that's interesting. I haven't seen a lot of the older movies as well. Earlier films. One I have not seen. Let's jump to this. So we got, there's a lot. Alien has been brought up a lot. Absolutely. A lot of fans of Alien. A lot of people saying they're going to watch Russian Ark. Please do. Night of the Living Dead, yes. Christopher, I visited the studio where they filmed Dustbowl. Braden, I got to walk through the Dustbowl set at the Bavarian Film Studio in Munich. Colin, Becca, add the Old Dark House to the list.
We have I have a long list of movies on my phone that Colin and Rachel need to watch, and I will. I'm looking at it right now. You can see me. I did not forget.
Yes, and that the House of Haunted Hill should be on someone's list.
Yes. There's so many. It's too hard.
So Braden and Christopher, I have also been to that museum. It was incredible and got to walk through the Dustbowl set. So I thought I'd share my own memories of that. This was my highlight from that day, was meeting Falkor and getting to put a big hug on Falkor. Wolfgang Peterson, who directed Dustbowl, also directed The Neverending Story. That was his first film. So here at this museum, right outside of Munich, you can not only meet Falkor, but ride Falkor against the blue screen. Probably one of the highlights of my life. I was 8 years old all over again. Thank you, Giselle, who's watching, for making that possible. That was my 40th birthday present, if memory serves, and clearly that's, I'm exactly the 40-year-old to be given that present too. So that was amazing. That was a really, really cool experience, and being able to walk through the set of the submarine was really, really impactful as well. You really get a sense of the claustrophobic. I can still smell the rust in that thing. My number 7 is Lars von Trier's 2003 film Dogville. Dogville literally takes place in one location at the same time that it doesn't. For those of you who haven't seen Dogville, the entire set is basically drawn in chalk. So it's a city, it's a town called Dogville. And in this town, there are different houses. There is a church. There is a tree. There are, different locations, but there's no sets. It's written on the ground. Maybe there's a table somewhere with a lamp. There's no walls. People move about the town on this giant set. And what was so incredible about it is that it's very much Lars von Trier's sort of indictment on small towns. And there is a sequence that I'll never forget my experience with it. It was a really, really tough sequence where there's an assault. A female character is assaulted in her home. And because there's no walls, the shot is kind of long. So you've got this horrible thing going on, and behind them in the next house, there's someone who's just cooking. And then on the street, there are kids who are just riding their bikes and playing their games. And all these people are oblivious to what's happening because, yes, there are walls in their world, but we are only getting a chalkboard outline. It's basically our town turned to hell, basically. And I remember just my stomach just being so twisted about the idea of like how suburbia was being presented and how thin walls are, I guess, and in reality, and in a way that I hadn't really considered. And I love when a filmmaker takes an approach that really illustrates something so palpably and so palpably, I guess is the right word for it, visually. And so it was a singular experience for me in the movies. You want to scream, do something, because you can all see what's happening and you're right there. But they can't see what's happening because, again, in their world, they have walls. It's just an incredible film. Dogville's very heavy, but extremely well acted, incredible ensemble cast. Nicole Kidman, James Caan, Lauren Bacall, a ton of people. Paul Bettany, just an Stellan Skarsgård, just an incredible cast. James Caan, I think I said that. A wonderful film by Lars von Trier, who of course is a filmmaker not for all tastes. So, you're talking to us about your number 6 by a filmmaker for all tastes.
Yes. Let's head back to horror. Well, I guess that Dogville can be pretty horrific as well. But with Sam Raimi's Evil Dead 2, Dead by Dawn from 1987. And this one, the summer between middle school and high school, I had always been kind of squeamish about horror. Especially like the poster for Child's Play 2, I had a way to walk around the video store to not see that box art because it, just Chucky with the Jack in the Box, just no, haunted my dreams. But I had a friend, Graham Schofield. He actually does makeup effects now for like CSI type shows. The summer between middle school and high school, he's all like, okay, it's time. We're doing the Evil Dead trilogy. And so over the course of, probably a week, he just knocked out number 1, number 2, and Army of Darkness. And Army of Darkness is great also. And so is the first one, but like number 2 is like that sweet spot between the horror and the comedy. And, it's all set in, well, I mean, they go outside of the cabin, but primarily, trapped in a cabin, the Necronomicon Book of the Dead is read aloud and unleashes, demons to possess people, and havoc ensues, and geysers of blood, and demonically possessed hands that need to be chopped off and then run around, talking taxidermy, the full range. I was actually listening to a podcast, the New Beverly. They sponsor the Pure Cinema podcast, and they had Edgar Wright on recently to talk about some of his favorite comedies, because he had done a list for Letterboxd, but like they just in general talk. The list goes far and wide, and he had an interesting take on Evil Dead 2, because Evil Dead 1 was caught up in the whole video nasties scandal in England of the 80s, where VHS cassettes weren't held to the same rating standard as movies that were in theaters. So there was this glut of, I could put, horrifying things on cassettes and put them in video stores, and little kids could get them. And so, pearl clutching and all that. And the first Evil Dead movie was on the banned list. And, he said, I didn't know this, but he said Sam Raimi had to even testify in court in England and try to defend the scene where the girl's assaulted by a tree in the original. And so his theory on Evil Dead 2 was, he's all like, okay, I'm going to go comedy. There's no, yes, it's still horror, but look, it's comedy. It's clearly comedy, guys. I'm not, I'm not some sadist here. And then just one of the great Bruce Campbell performances. It's ground zero for K&B effects. Nicotero, Kurtzman, and Berger, they are great on their own, but they all worked together, did all the makeup effects for that film. They did the effects for From Dusk Till Dawn. Nicotero does The Walking Dead.
Yeah.
And I think it was Kurtzman did the walrus suit for Kevin Smith's Tusk and stuff. So they're all legends on their own, but they, all work together here.
Right on. That's a great one. My number 6 is Hard Candy by David Slade, a 2005 film. Another heavy one. I'm realizing that my list is really, really heavy.
Light on the laughs.
Yeah. I was just, these are the films that came to me. But really, what I was thinking was, what are the movies that made me want to run? What are the movies that made me want to get the hell out of the house or the submarine or whatever it was? And Hard Candy is a very difficult watch, but a movie where, when you've got a film like Hard Candy, like Glengarry Glen Ross, that almost made my list, where you're isolated, you really need great performances. You're going to be with a very, very small cast of people and characters for a long, long time. And if you're going to feel the stakes of what's happening, and if you're going to feel the desperation, you need good performances. And every time I revisit this film, I'm even more blown away by the performances that Patrick Wilson and Ellen Page the stars of the film bring to this film. For those of you who are unfamiliar with it, it's about a young girl. I want to say she's 14 or 15. I can't remember. Who gets picked up on by an older gentleman who's in his late 20s or early 30s. I can't remember. And goes to his house and then turns the tables on him. I'm not spoiling anything because it's kind of all in the advertising. For being the kind of gentleman that would pick up on a younger girl, but then it sort of expands from there, and you start to get an idea that this may be more premeditated, and there may be research about it. It just sort of gets more and more and more sinister at the same time that she gets more and more and more violent, and it's provocative. It's really well done. It's an unsettling film. But considering, you're in one location, there's such an incredible application of style to this film. Color is used really, really effectively. A lot of visual symbolism that is just, it's that great symbolism that's both subtle and not subtle at the same time. Because at the end of the day, it is just a domestic horror story. But really, really well done. As you can see the poster art, and I just pull it back up. I love this poster art. Because the bear trap, because that's essentially what you're getting into. Just a great thriller, great film. Talk to us about your number 5.
My number 5 is 2015's The Invitation, which is on Netflix. So a lot of you may have seen it. I went into it pretty cold, so I don't want to give too much away because I didn't really know what I was getting into, and I think it made for the most enjoyable / terrifying experience, because basically the premise is a couple goes to a dinner party at his ex's, and things get weird fast. It's just kind of, not even fast, but you're just like, there's just this atmosphere as you're watching it, like something bad is gonna happen, and I don't really know what, and it seems safe, but it's just like, that slow burning tension. Oh, I don't know. I was like watching it like this because I was like, I don't know where this is going. I feel terrible. And yeah, it's a good little thriller horror kind of movie. Like I said, I don't want to give too much away, but it really surprised me when I watched it. I'm like, where did this movie come from? It just kind of popped up there, and it was terrifying, but really good.
It is one where you want people to watch it, but you just don't want to tell them anything about it.
Yes, exactly.
There's another film, it's a sci-fi film that almost made my list, called Coherence. That's another one where it's like, just watch it. I don't want to go into it, because just to even say the genre kind of spoils too much. But great pick. And best not to say anything. Watch The Invitation. From the chat, Giselle says, I can't with Lars except Kingdom. So his miniseries, Lars von Trier's miniseries, is what came to me first. And then that led me to think of Dogville, and I immediately thought Dogville would be a better pick for this. But Kingdom, almost for the most part, takes place inside a hospital. That would have been fine. Evil Dead 2 made Craig's list. Groovy, says Colin. Christopher Aguilar says, Hard Candy. I totally forgot about this film. Thanks for the spooky memory. I agree, the performances were fantastic. Yeah, Hard Candy's a trip. My number 5, forgive me, it's a tie, but it's my high school tie. And it's interesting having rewatched one and having just seen the other to kind of put them in this context. But my number 5 is 1985's The Breakfast Club by John Hughes, which obviously for those who haven't seen it, it takes place not only in a high school, but specifically for the most part in a detention room. And then 30 years later, 2015's The Fits by Anna Rose Holmer. It's interesting to have these two films in my head at the same time, because clearly they're both personal. John Hughes, obviously, all of his films, if not most, if not all, were set in Chicago, have that new wave soundtrack, and are very white in terms of the cast, especially considering you're in Chicago, and and are personal to him. And The Breakfast Club is an interesting watch because a lot of that just doesn't. A lot of the jokes, a lot of the motifs, it's one of those films that I hope survives in a time capsule because the disconnect, I think, has already happened generationally. I think that the tropes are still there. We still have our jocks, and we still have our there's a whole monologue about that. But the characters are a little bit out of reach, I felt, which was tough because I grew up on that film. But there's so much about that film that's fantastic. For completely taking place inside a one classroom, it manages to pack a lot of the teenage experience into a film. And then you flash forward 30 years later and you have The Fits. And what I loved about The Fits is it also completely takes place in a high school, but it adds a certain surreal element to the proceedings. I believe, because again, all art is very subjective, and this is not a movie that spells out its themes or The Fits is fantastic. It's very much an art film. It does not spoon feed you anything. It just presents. And what I was getting out of it was that this filmmaker too was talking about teen angst and popularity and a lot of the things that teenagers go through, and acceptance and cliques and friendships and jealousies and all of the high school experience in a very artistic, indirect, unlike The Breakfast Club where it's all in the screenplay. This one was all in the music, this very, very unsettling score. You've got people in The Fits who are just, maybe they're doing a gym warm-up, but the music is something out of Under the Skin. You know what I mean? Where you're just like unsettled the whole time and you're not quite sure why, but you're seeing everything through the gaze of one young teenage character. And so it's not long before okay, so this is maybe what the feeling she's applying to what she's seeing. It's done with very little sort of spoon-feeding screenplay, narrative. I think the two are really interesting sort of bookends to each other in the sense that they're both addressing the same thing in very, very stylistically different ways. And I thought it was interesting also that it came out 30 years apart. Mm-hmm. I think I asked you last time, you saw The Fits, right?
Yes. Yeah, I did. It was one of my Criterion Quarantine picks a week or two ago. And then actually, I can't remember the name of the song, but Anna Rose Homer, she did a really interesting music video for a James Blake song starring Natalie Portman. It's essentially pregnant Natalie Portman in a swimming pool, but like amazingly photographed. It's worth checking out. And I think they're going to do a feature together, Natalie Portman and Anna Rose Homer.
Right on. Yeah, it's just I put it back up because I think it's on Criterion Channel. It's on Amazon Prime. It is such an enigmatic film, and I love that about it. It is shamelessly, directly enigmatic, but never feels anything less than completely palpable. So, talk to us about your number 4.
It's up to me. Okay.
It's you.
This was the other earlier. I said that there was back when weird stuff was on Netflix. This is Nocturama by Bertrand Bonello, a French filmmaker. Originally, this movie was going to be called Paris is a Party, and originally it was going to come out in 2016. Well, it did finally come out in 2016 in Paris, but here in America, it went pretty much straight to Netflix. Grasshopper Films owns it and put it out on Blu-ray, and we're able to get it into a few theaters. But due to the subject matter, especially so, while it was in production, I think it had just finished filming in Paris. The Bataclan attack in Paris happened, at the concert in 2015. And the movie is about a group of young, millennials that are essentially, they're a terrorist unit. They pull off a series of bombings around Paris. And so after that, they're like, okay, we're not going to call it Paris is a Party anymore. And and people didn't, distributors didn't want to touch it. It was sort of like how Battle Royale, nobody wanted to touch it after Columbine.
Right.
So nobody wanted to touch Nocturama after that. But it's an interesting film because like they never spell out why they did it, like what their message was, and like you see the kids and you think like, oh, that kid's this minority or that minority, but it's really a united colors of Benetton of kids. You got the whitest of the white, and then you have some immigrants from probably North Africa, and you got men and women. You can't like really ascribe, except it's generational, like it's a young versus the old. And the reason that I put it on this list is because the bulk of the film is after they've committed their bombings, they hide in a mall. So it's them, in this like shopping mall, and it's very almost reminiscent of Dawn of the Dead, which could have been on here. Sure. And then just like, so it allows them to wander to different stores and have different experiences. And there's a drag performance of Shirley Bassey's rendition of My Way, and a prominent usage of Willow Smith's I Whip My Hair Back and Forth. But just sort of ambiguous, but there's enough there, and then just amazing, beautiful imagery, and really, really great use of music.
Yeah, I remember when that one was coming out, and I had completely forgotten about it until right now when you started describing it. I'm like, oh my god, I remember when that movie was getting some buzz. So definitely one I should definitely catch up on. So I mentioned to them earlier that I'm always curious to know if we'll get any crossover films, and we have one crossover film, and it's my number 4, which is Karen Kusama's The Invitation from 2015. Yeah, totally, yeah. How could this not be on my list? This is a fantastic film. That again, what's that?
It fits on your list in the downer vibes.
And one again that we're just not going to talk about. Just watch The Invitation. It's on Netflix. It's on Amazon for $1.99. Karen Kusama did an amazing job. Great performances, and just go into it knowing nothing. Enjoy the ride. Really quickly from the chat. Laura, Breakfast Club is a classic. It still holds up today. Always makes you tear up. Absolutely. It still holds up. What's interesting is, so we have a lot of youth interns. We have a lot of high school and college interns, and I'm always really fascinated to know what classics they also are appreciating. We have a lot of, but also like I love talking to them about films that are very much of their time, to see which ones are they and which ones are they kind of like eh. And it was weird. Whenever I talk about the Breakfast Club specifically, I've been getting more and more like, and that's what I mean. Like I'm starting to wonder if there is a little bit of a age disconnect to that one. Might that for some reason be a film that's a little too much of its time? But no, this 45-year-old can watch it all day long and still get so much out of it.
A lot of John Hughes movies are becoming less. Like, yeah, when I think of like John Hughes movies, like, oh, they're classics, but when you watch them now, you're like, that treatment of that female character is real problematic.
Oh my god!
That in a lot of those movies that I feel like now when you see them for the first time as a young person in 2020, you're just kind of like, yeah, pass.
16 Candles. 16 Candles alone is just shocking. That's a whole show right there. What's that?
Molly Ringwald did a piece for the New Yorker
a
couple years ago about like reconciling like, well, her part in it, her love of John Hughes, but also like a lot of the racial and sexual stereotypes of that era. And I don't know if it was part of that, but also I remember a lot of Criterion purists having a hissy fit about it getting included in the Criterion collection, the Breakfast Club.
That's interesting. That one and Revenge of the Nerds, which is another one that as a kid I love that. That was the funniest thing in the world. And then you just rewatch it and yeah, interesting ones. But that could be a show unto itself. The top 10 movies that we go back and our jaws hit the floor. But give me your number. What's that?
I said The Party.
The Party. I used to go. Okay, so the Bay Theater in Seal Beach would pay The Party maybe twice a year, and I would go twice a year to watch the film. And it's really funny you should bring that up. Just recently, I was talking to someone, and I said, "Have you seen The Party?" I'm like, "Oh, it's great." And I literally said, Peter Sellers plays an Indian guy who shows up at and already I'm like,
wait.
and then I want to, like, how do I continue? And he guffaws his way and trips and falls and says words funny, and I'm like, oh my god, like, yeah, it's an interesting thing.
I still love it.
What's that?
Yeah,
The Party. At least we've always known, to our credit, that there was something severely wrong with Breakfast at Tiffany's. I'll say that much.
I almost see it actually like as because it's the same filmmaker. It's Blake Edwards, so it's almost like he doubled down because the reaction to Mickey Rooney. And he's like, okay, yeah, I get it, it's racist, but I'm gonna make it all about that guy, and I'm gonna make you love him, and he's gonna be the hero. He's not gonna, he starts out the butt of the joke, but by the end of the party, it's.
I hear you. I know. It's that is a show.
I'm not saying he was successful in it, but I'm saying that was probably the.
It's really it's interesting. There's a lot of movies recently that I've been rewatching, and just like with a totally different lens, and but anyway, give us your number 3. Speaking of old films, this one's from 1951.
Yes.
Yes.
The Detective Story, 1951, starring Kirk Douglas. We first saw this at the TCM Film Festival in a super packed, as they always are, a very packed screening. And I don't know how many first-time watchers there were, but there's a lot of very vocal reactions to the plot of this movie. It's one day in a police station. Very, very few scenes set outside of it. They arrive. There's one scene where they go somewhere but come right back. So it's one day in this police station. Kirk Douglas plays Detective McCloud, and you really get to know all of the other people who are being booked. You have like the goofy, lovable lady who stole a purse. You have the 2 guys that are like 4-time, armed robbery type, hardened criminals that are also silly in their own way. You got the young guy who just made a mistake, and will he ruin his life over it? And at the heart of it is Kirk Douglas, who's just a very angry character. There are moments in this movie where he's yelling and he sounds like a dog barking. It's amazing the power he puts into this performance. I mean, he's always he's a legend for a reason. He's really a force of nature in this movie. But it was a very pleasant surprise. I was mad at Craig, actually. He wanted to see Detective Story at TCM. I'm like, we're going to miss Singing in the Rain. So I was pouting. I hadn't even heard of Detective Story, but fine, I'll sit through it. But I really liked it, and then we just revisited it. And it was every bit as good as I remember. I really like movies. I mean, it was a play, and I like movies that retain that sense of like, here is the set, here are the characters, settle in, get to know them, and you're just like so in the story and all the twists and turns and everything. All the stories they're able to tell all these characters in one police station in one day. It's amazing. I don't think enough people have seen it. You can rent it on Amazon Prime, but otherwise it's pretty hard to find. The DVD's pretty expensive. But $3 Amazon Prime. You guys have nothing better to do.
Yes.
Watch it. It's fun.
Not one I've seen. I'll have to follow up on it.
Watching this, I think you'd like this one.
Giselle says, "Oh, Jake Ryan, that's just wrong." Christopher, I hate that how when we get older and smarter, our classics become questionable. Oh, sexual stereotype. Yeah, no, it's very true. Giselle, past stereotypes. How about you could have my passing out drunk girlfriend? Oh my, yeah, 16 candles. Yeah,
Do
absolutely.
it. The nerd doesn't get the prom queen passed out as a gift, a show of goodwill. No.
Shocking.
Bad.
And then Colin says 2001 and Doctor Strangelove could almost make this list. Yeah, sure. Alien, it didn't even occur to me. Alien would have easily made this list. Airplane, they kind of leave the airplane here and there, but it's another great one. But Alien could have been totally on here. 2001, Doctor. Huh?
The old man trapped in a room.
Giselle? Huh?
The
Unwell.
yeah, they can't leave the room movie.
The
Yeah.
right. And then Colin says, Giselle says, Logan reminded me of the racist language in Bad News Bears. Yikes, but I love the movie. Yeah, we were talking about Bad News Bears as a kid film, and I'm like, but the language, and she's like, yeah, whatever, they cuss, because they cuss like crazy. I'm like, no, there's a word in there that this kid just throws out, and it's like, yeah, it's easy to forget. Add detective stories to the list. Also, Craig, stop making sense.
Single location.
Didn't even occur to me till just now. There are so many. Yeah. My number 3 film is 2012's Compliance by Craig Zobel. It is a film that's based on a true story. It is an incredibly intense film that essentially all takes place at a McDonald's. I don't know if memory serves, if they refer to it as McDonald's in the movie or if it's just a fast food restaurant. But it's based on the true story of this situation that actually happened where a horrible person was calling different restaurants, pretending to be a police officer, to convince the management that one of their staff members, one of the junior staff, had done something wrong, and to talk them into restraining the person and doing any number of things to that person until he gets there, just to see how far he could go. And in one situation, the manager, who is so brilliantly played by Ann Dowd in this film, Ann Dowd from The Handmaid's Tale, just an incredible Emmy Award-winning actress, plays the manager at this particular restaurant, who, believing that she's talking to a police officer and he's the authority and she's going to comply and do everything that he tells her to do, proceeds to do increasingly horrible things to this poor young female employee, just based solely on the fact that she thinks she's talking to a police officer and he's in charge. It's a really heavy film, all the more so because it's based on something that actually happened. And another one where you just, as the movie progresses, you just are becoming increasingly uncomfortable and just want to rush in there and get these people out of there. It's very well done. It's not exploitive. I think with a plot like that, one would be concerned that it would be, or that it would be played for genre thrills. It's not. It's very subdued. It feels very independent, low key. The characters feel real. It doesn't have, at that point, Ann Dowd hadn't been on The Handmaid's Tale, so it's unfamiliar faces to really get you into the reality of the situation, and it's just a fantastic provocative film. Your number 2.
Not so depressing as yours.
Nah.
No, not at all.
Gremlins 2.
Yeah.
Just this batshit crazy film, like Evil Dead 2 was. Because what's the point in doing a sequel unless you're gonna top the original and go more hardcore? We actually just revisited it for New Year's Eve, which was actually kind of fitting. I don't know, where at the end with the New York number, just very. But yeah, it's the sequel to Gremlins. I guess, according to legend, Joe Dante had been refusing for years. And they're like, literally, you can do whatever you want. And he's like, all right. And just made this fourth wall breaking, just insanity. There's a Key and Peele skit about where they spitball what the writer's room would have been like. And Joe himself has said it's not too far off from the truth. electricity gremlin, lady gremlin, vegetable gremlin, and like this weird, that the John Glover character, he's playing like a somewhere between Trump and Ted Turner, but he ends up kind of being the hero, and I don't know, it's just weird and so fun. Yeah, and I remember being a kid, I wasn't I wasn't allowed to see it, but like it was in that 80s era. Well, it was 1990, but the holdover from the 80s era, where like films that you probably shouldn't see at a young age have like children's merchandise. I remember going to Pick and Save and like get the Gremlins 2 coloring book, and like I don't know, just a lot of warm feelings.
I remember it's the weirdest things that you remember. I remember seeing Gremlins 2 when it came out. What year was that again? Was that
1990?
1990. So I would have been 14 probably if it came out in the summer. And I remember seeing it with a group of friends. And I don't know why this is one of the memories I have of my youth, but I had this friend named Jason Story who just had the... he was a sucker for humor. He loved to laugh. He loved to be entertained, and whatever made him laugh. And we were already slap happy from the ridiculous of this film. It's ridiculous, right? And so we were already just responding. The scene where Hulk Hogan gets up in the theater. So at one point you're inside a theater, and Hulk Hogan just randomly shows up in the theater, and I remember Jason just lost it. Just from seeing him. And then when Hulk Hogan starts yelling at the projection room and tears his shirt open because the Gremlins are in the projection room stopping the film, Jason, he all but vomited. He could not stop laughing for maybe another 10 minutes into the film. And we were all trying to calm him down, and he was like dying in his seat because of the like insanity that was Hulk Hogan suddenly showing up in this meta way because the film itself had been interrupted. I'll never forget that because I just remember that still makes me laugh. I have that weird thing where I remember movie going experiences sometimes like very vividly and nothing else from that year, But yeah, it's it was a movie that because it was very different from the original Gremlins. Gremlins felt like Frank Capra plus monsters, and Gremlins 2 does not. It's trauma almost, you know what I mean? But I love it as well. I didn't as a kid, to be honest. I felt really disappointed by it. I wanted more heart, the heart and the movies. I mean, I grew up, Gremlins came out when I was 9, and that score and the music is beautiful in Gremlins, and the warmth of it and the Christmas. I was a sucker for Christmas, It was like a Christmas film to me, like It's a Wonderful Life or Christmas Story. So when the second one came out and it was so zany, I remember thinking it was fun but feeling disappointed, and I've since grown to really, really appreciate it for what it is. The more I've also learned about, old zany horror tropes, why Christopher Lee and, Grandpa Munster and all these cameos that are in the film, I finally see what it's a celebration of, I guess.
Yeah. I've been meaning to check out... there's like a film from the 30s called Hell's a Poppin', and it's not a horror film, but that's apparently the inspiration for the style of Gremlins 2. And I've seen it, that it's on YouTube, and it's like a little over an hour. I maybe tonight, honey. No.
A couple comments. The Christopher Aguiar says, how about Ethan Hawke's movie Tape? I think it takes place in a motel room, and it's based off a play too, like Becca'lise recommended. I've never seen Tape. It does place. I know it's in a hotel room, but I've never seen it. I should. Christina, oh my God, Gremlins 2 is love. Absolutely. Christopher wants to know if either of you are making films nowadays.
What?
Are you making films nowadays?
Not really. I have a half-completed screenplay on my hard drive with Colin.
Excellent.
Rachel. There was a period where he was unemployed and Becca was working nights, and so he would come over and we were banging it out, and then he had to go and get a friggin' job, and then just schedules haven't are hard to manage, and so.
Colin were banging it out when I was working nights.
Oh, I'm sorry.
And then, sorry.
But yeah, it's probably halfway to 2/3 done. It's a good idea. Like it's a like a period piece during the 1954 comic book panic. Like parents were, like just like nowadays violent video games and stuff. Parents were, like, oh, comic books are making our kids juvenile delinquents. And so the idea is a kid turns up dead in a small town, and everyone's blaming comic books, and big city reporter gets sent to the suburbs to kind of cover the story and uncovering the truth of what maybe the real story is behind this dead kid.
Oh, wow. That's the one you're writing right now? That sounds intriguing.
Well, I mean, it's been half finished for the...
Hey, man, get at it. I want to read it. Colin says, how dare you share our plot... No, he did not say that. He said we got to finish that script.
There's record that, this could be, if somebody steals our idea, it's
That's true. That's true. Craig's mom remembers being manipulated many times in that period.
Into watching my...
I thought you had just in a general way. Okay.
The real manipulation is I somehow convinced my aunt to take me to go see the first Bad Boys movie in theaters on Easter. Like you could see the newspaper ad that said R, but I'm somehow through sheer rhetoric, I convinced her it was actually PG-13, and she took me to see Bad Boys on Easter. So that was the ultimate of my abilities.
Mine will always be, and thank God for that, the time that I begged my parents to take me to see the new film from the director of The Elephant Man and Dune, and I was 10 years old. Yes. And that would be Blue Velvet, and it changed my life. All right, my number two. I know. Can you imagine taking Lola to see Blue Velvet when she's 10? Yeah, okay.
She's 4, which I feel pretty bad about.
There you go.
It's real animals. It's nature. It's educational.
Which one?
Roar.
Oh, you showed her Roar? Oh. Just don't. Just.
I didn't intend to show her Roar, but she was really into it, and.
What's that? I have an idea for a list. My list is going to be 10 films that traumatized me as a child that were for kids that you should not show Lola.
I have an old blog post about movie moments from my childhood that scarred me.
Yeah, no Watership Down, none of this. Okay, my number 2 is Dog Day Afternoon by Sidney Lumet, 1975. A great year, if I may. Dog Day Afternoon is fantastic. I'm sure that most people watching are more than familiar with it. The vast majority of it takes place in a bank, a good 90+% of it. True story of a bank heist that was done by a gentleman who wanted to use the money to get a sex change operation for his partner. Played in the movie by, why am I blanking? Christopher, what's that? Sarandon. Chris Sarandon, thank you, yes. By Chris Sarandon, who I think got an Oscar nomination for the role. One of the 5 incredible John Cazale films that he made. Talk about a run. Incredible, well done, tight, humorous, well acted, thrilling, everything you want in a film. I think just one of the true gems of the 1970s. As far as I think an untouchable film.
There's I can't remember what it's called, but there's a documentary about like the guy, the Pacino part, like the guy who Pacino was playing.
Isn't it called like The Guy or The Dude or something like that, or the
dog?
The Dog. Yeah, that's it.
Afternoon and like
Right. That's it. Yeah. I haven't seen it.
I saw it. It's just as wild, if not wilder, than what made it onto the screen.
Yeah, it's a great film, and one of those films where the people who work at the bank end up being really compelling characters, and again a cast of, and I don't know much about the history if they went and purposely found non-actors, but you really feel that you're in this bank with these people and they're responding and they're slowly starting to sympathize with the people who've taken over their bank, and it's just a great film. So we're up to your number one.
Yay!
Amazing.
My number one is another sort of filmed play situation set almost entirely in one house, is 1956, The Bad Seed. I was raised on this movie. I don't know why. I saw it so many times growing up. But yes, The Bad Seed is about a very prim and proper, perfect little girl with her blonde pigtails and her dresses, but she is a sociopathic monster. It's very few scenes take place outside the house, but I was talking to Craig about this movie, and I was telling him that I can almost picture scenes that take place outside because they talk about them in the movie. It's like the children were on a field trip, and the lifeguard kept telling her to stay away from the water boat, and I can picture her and the classmates, but they just talk about it, and I forget that it's all just pretty much entirely except for a couple scenes in the one house, and they're just describing, there's no flashbacks, they just are discussing it. But this movie, it's so good. Lots of really, really good performances. There's a literal curtain call at the end, which just adds that whole filmed play thing that I love so much. It's kind of iconic, give me back my shoes and the tap shoes, and what is she gonna do with the shoes? It's so good.
It's her finger. It's how she pulls it out. Like, it's almost like it's in a holster. You give me, there's a camera. You give me back my shoes. I mean, it's like, she's like a little Edward G. Robinson. That scene, I only saw this for the first time recently, maybe 3 or 4 years ago. And yeah, I mean, she was it Patty McCormack? Was amazing. And the woman who played, she drank, was it, what's that?
The dead boy's mom?
Spoilers, but yes.
Incredible. Like,
I think she got an Oscar for that.
She won the Oscar?
No.
Okay, yeah. Amazing performance. Amazing performance.
It's not a large role, but she's amazing in it. Everyone's amazing. There's a scene where the mother, because the little perfect girl plays the piano, and it drives the mom crazy as she's starting to realize what's happening, and the mother is just like banging her hand on the table, and she's just like can't take it, but she's like smacking her hand on that table so hard. I'm like, these actors are in it. Like, everyone's just really going for it.
It is one of those movies where you watch that's a classic, and at some level, we've come to convince ourselves that there was a moment where people really got real with their performances, and before that they were just sort of phoning it in or being, and then you see a movie like The Miracle Worker, where they're there, they are going to town, they are bringing their all, and they're getting dirty, and they're getting bruised, and they are performing, and it's incredible, and it's visceral, and The Bad Seed is another one where the pain and the sort of like frustration that her mother is feeling is never less than absolutely visceral in this movie. And then the mourning of this alcohol, I don't know if she's alcoholic or she's drinking because she's in mourning, but you've got, what's up?
She's drinking because of her anguish.
Yeah, and she's just
escort her back, and she's just, I'm sorry, I never knew you had so many social obligations. She's just so good. She's
so good, and I was really impressed because I think growing up I just knew enough of it as a creepy movie about a creepy little girl, and that yada yada yada, but all the supporting characters, even the creepy guy who worked on the house, you want your old shoes? That guy was like
girl and a blue chap and little boys.
But seriously, man, when she finally you give me my shoes, she whips her little finger up, and it's almost like a gun in a holster. It's the funniest thing.
There's a quality she has. So I saw they remade it recently, and I watched about 30 seconds of it. But there's a quality she has that is, she's so prim and proper, and then she turns to angry, and it's not like, I'm a child actor playing a creepy little kid, which I can't stand in movies where they get it right. And I'm thinking too of there's this great movie called The Innocents. Doesn't apply to this list necessarily, but there's child characters that are really, they make your skin crawl a bit because they're so charming, and they remade that too. And just the trailer, it's like, I'm a creepy little kid who's gonna stare at you. I'm like, no, that's not what it is. It's the eerie, mature quality that certain child actors can pull off, and that's what I think Patty McCormack as Rhoda has. She's just, oh mother, I have the prettiest mother, I have the sweetest mother, and you're like, oh, like stop, but not, she's not doing the child actor dead eye stare of like, oh, I'm creepy because I'm acting creepy, or
for those of you who go to a lot of
so well.
For those of you who go to a lot of movies or who were going to a lot of movies before everything shut down, that trailer that you saw a million times for The Turning, that is a remake of the film that Becca's talking about, The Innocents, which is so good. Deborah,
I love that movie.
So good.
Everybody watch it twice because you have to watch that movie twice. It's so good.
It's like The Others. The second time is 10 times more fun. So
I love when a movie has that like twist, and then you watch it again, and there's no holes. Really,
right. Well, there's not only no holes, but like what I love about The Others and Shutter Island, specifically those two, are there's not only no holes, but there's all these goodies that you get to appreciate at another layer, another level. Now that you know, and they're all, and you're like little throwaway moments or lines where you're like, well, that was weird, are suddenly hilarious, or really sad, depending. I just rewatched The Others recently, and I was just blown away by how much there is in that movie to lead to where it goes. But
I watch it every year, and you just find a new little clue every time. You're like, oh, like,
right. Oh, that's what she. Okay. Got
someone's collected our mail in weeks. I don't know what's wrong, and you're like, oh, like things like that. Oh, so good. Such a good
one.
Yeah, it's bad. You can rent it on Amazon Prime. It is so much fun. It is a deliciously wicked little movie.
And I believe it's John Waters' favorite film, if that compels any of you to go watch it right away.
I've seen a photo of him with adult Peggy McCormack.
Oh, nice. Well, my number one, as soon as you suggested the list, it was just like my go-to. Just an incredible film. My number one, also by Sidney Lumet, interestingly enough, is 1957's 12 Angry Men. An absolute masterpiece, all taking place inside a jury room, basically. It starts in the jury room and it ends in the jury room, and you never leave that jury room. You've got this incredible cast led by Martin Balsam, Lee J. Cobb, E.J. Marshall, Jack Warden, Ed Begley, and of course Henry Fonda. It's been redone any number of times. It was a play, first of all. It is very much, like Becca'lise mentioned, one of those movies that doesn't try to hide that it was a play. Here's the set, here's the cast, go. But it's just a powerhouse movie for performances, and it's provocative. I think it's very much ahead of its time in a lot of ways. But basically, the plot is that you've got a trial, and someone has been convicted of murder, and it's up to the jury to decide whether or not this person could literally get the death penalty. He could be, executed for this. And it starts, you never see the trial. You never see anything, I think, but these men. It just starts with them walking into the room, and they have their first vote, and it's 11 to convict and one holdout. And that holdout is Henry Fonda. And then through the course of the film, they all start to discuss, Henry Fonda is trying to really push for essentially the doubt, help me out here, benefit of the doubt, that they can't, without reasonable doubt, that he has a reasonable doubt that this man is guilty. There are holes, and yes, all these things don't look right, and all these things point to this is the guy who did it, but I'm not convinced completely. And are you all convinced completely? And how conversation and just meeting people halfway, there's so many dynamics that play out in the film. moments where you could take a lesson in terms of how to convince people to listen to you, how to listen for one, like how to take a moment and a pause to actually listen to someone and understand where they're coming from before you try to sort of reframe something for them. Even the idea of reframing. There's just so much that happens in this room. And the remake that came out years later, I think it was for TV. And it's George C. Scott and Jack Lemmon, also incredible. What's that?
I think for Showtime or something.
Showtime, also incredible. But this original to me is hands down just one of the finest movies, one of the finest ensemble films ever in terms of the performances, incredible cast, and yeah, it's my number one. Let's see what we have for notes. Anything on that film while I look at the notes?
That was one of the first ones that came to my mind too.
Yeah.
I was like, maybe someone will pick it.
Yeah. It's just a great one.
The textbook example of like your filmed play, one location, great performances. Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And there's a moment where, without giving too much away, where a knife is thrown, and it's just such a powerful. It's one of those moments that to me just always just gets me all verklempt, just the way it's shot and the sound of the knife going through the wood and everything. What's up?
One of those movies that can make you feel heat because it's supposed to be a very hot day as well, and like you're loosening your proverbial collar as you watch it. You
got this one little powerless metal fan on the wall that's just squeaking along at this room full of angry men in suits. The Bad Seed is a classic. Yes, The Bad Seed. Fun fact, Britney Spears starred in an off-Broadway adaptation of The Bad Seed when she was younger. That'd be fun to watch. Just remember they call the play Ruthless. I did not know that. So The Bad Seed, Christopher, are you saying The Bad Seed was originally called Ruthless? Chime in. That's fun if it was. I'm surprised that Becca didn't have The Favorite on her list.
This is too hard, guys. It's too hard. There's a lot that didn't make the list.
Exactly.
If a whole farm counts, The Other. Yeah, The Other could have easily been on this list. I was hoping Locke would be on somebody's list. Here's why Locke wasn't. I haven't seen it. And it's funny is I was just defending Tom Hardy to someone.
Yeah, we saw the Frida. I didn't really like it that much. It definitely would count since it's a car and he's talking. Yeah, I mean, I would have edited it. It was.
I had somebody recently was saying they're not a Tom Hardy fan. They don't like him. They think he overacts. And I was going to suggest Locke as a film to watch, but I haven't seen it.
I'm definitely not particularly.
I can take or leave. I can take or leave him.
So speaking of Tom Hardy.
But Bronson's good.
Speaking of Tom Hardy, when I saw The Invitation, I couldn't figure out who I was looking at.
You're not alone. There's whole.
Staring at him, I'm like.
Logan Marshall Green.
There's whole website things about Logan Marshall. Is it Logan or Tom Hardy? It's
look a lot alike. And
not,
I was like,
not this Logan. That doesn't happen.
Yeah, I spent a good 10-15 minutes at the start of the movie. I'm like, I don't understand who I'm looking at right now. I had to look it up. I'm like, this is not Tom Hardy. Okay.
Yeah, but speaking of movies that take place in cars, Cosmopolis, that was kind of fun. 12 Angry Men, Drop the Mic. I agree. What's up?
Poseidon Adventure. One of my favorite movies would have counted.
Oh, there's got to be a Morning After. Becca'lise, you completely forgot about Poseidon Adventure. Oh my gosh. 12 Angry Men, absolutely on board 12 Angry Men. You have to see it when they do it as 12 Angry Women. No joke. What is that? Is that something one can find on the internet? Shyamalan? No, they called the adaptation on Broadway Ruthless. So I guess the adaptation of The Bad Seed was called Ruthless. So that was fun. We were talking about doing, and folks, feel free to chime in if you have any last minute things to say. We'll read them. We were talking about doing another one. What movies that? What do we say?
Guilty pleasure sci-fi, which
guilty pleasure sci-fi. Yes.
Definitely get behind.
Because next week would have been the Starship Frida.
Yes, folks. So next Saturday would have been our 12-hour overnight science fiction marathon, which. Actually, we were talking about, we would have announced this a couple of weeks ago, would have been all day. We were going to keep Camp Frida. We were going to keep Camp Frida overnight and do the sci-fi one 12 p.m. to 12 a.m. as a change. We obviously are not going to be doing Starship Frida this year. We always did it close to May the 4th, so that's why always the first Saturday of May. But in celebration of what would have been Starship Frida, we talked about doing our top 10 guilty pleasure sci-fi films. Why? Because the top 10 sci-fi films, it just seems like such an easy kind of list, and you read a lot, and I'm sure that whatever films would be on our top 10 sci-fi list would be...
Like 2001: A Space Odyssey?
Oh my god, it's like it's a good movie.
Exactly, but the guilty pleasures, so many to pick from. Ice Pirates, Solar Babies, we'll see. So that's what we're doing. Giselle, sad face for Starship Frida. I know. It's all good though. It's all good because look, we're doing this. This is great. We love what we're doing now. What's that? This is great. Look at. There has been so much that has sprung up from this, and not just with the Frida. I mean, I've been tied into a lot of the arts organizations in Orange County, talking to South Coast Repertory just yesterday about what they're doing by taking their plays and putting them online. Digital art walk that's coming up for downtown Santa Ana, where the first Saturday of every month is art walk, and they did it last month. They'll do it this month. They did this month. They'll do it next month, where they're doing a special digital art walk and bringing the artists to you at home. And for us, we miss obviously everyone. We can't wait to see you again. We miss things like Starship Frida, but things like this have sprung up. Our Streamathon, we've got another one coming up. Our streaming films, the opportunity to have an audience in Texas. We had someone in Texas write a couple days ago to tell us how much they loved Extraordinary. And I wrote to the staff, I'm like, hey, we just shared a film with someone in Texas. That's something we weren't able to do before. So, that's what I'm saying is when we reopen and we hope that day comes sooner than later, I don't want to stop these. I think these are great. They're a lot of fun. And it's, it's what we do. We talk about movies anyway, so why not do it? Why not do it to an audience? So, any parting words? Starship Frida shall return. Absolutely, Giselle. Number one, Ice Pirates, of course. Of course, with you. Ice Pirates. I can't. Anyway. Anything you want to close with?
Not really. We're all over the internet. We're not hard to find.
Yes, you've got it right underneath everyone. That's where you can find them on Twitter, Facebook, Instagram, and their website.
Yeah, we miss you all, and thank you for watching, friends and family. And we're enjoying. I mean, we could call you, I suppose, but it's fun. Like
we knock out a bunch all at once.
Yeah.
So tune in next Saturday, folks, as we share our top 10 guilty pleasure science fiction films. And until then, please stay safe out there, wash your hands, socially distance, and take care of yourselves, take care of each other, and we'll see you in a week. You two have a very good night. Say hello to Lola for us. Very good night. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.